In 1858, I captured a photograph of a boy whose gaze pierced through time. His eyes, though closed, seemed to see everything. What I discovered about him changed my life forever. I stood in my studio, the air thick with the scent of chemicals and dust. The year was 1858, and photography was still a marvel, a new alchemy of light and silver. My camera, a hulking wooden box, sat on its tripod, ready to capture the world. I was a young photographer, eager to make my mark in a small town where everyone knew each other's secrets. That day, a woman arrived with her son, a boy no older than 10. She was pale, her hands trembling as she smoothed his dark hair. He stood still, his face blank, his eyes closed. I thought it odd, but I'd seen stranger things in my line of work. She paid me in advance, her coins cold in my palm. "Make him look alive," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, unsure of what she meant. The boy didn't move, didn't speak. I adjusted my lens, the glass catching the dim light. Something about him felt wrong, but I couldn't place it. I began the exposure, counting the seconds in my head. The process was slow, requiring the subject to stay still for nearly a minute. Most children fidgeted, but this boy was a statue. His mother stood behind me, her breath uneven, as if she were holding back tears. I focused the lens, the image sharpening in the ground glass. His face was pale, almost translucent, like porcelain under candlelight. His eyes remained shut, lashes dark against his skin. I wondered if he was asleep, but his posture was too rigid, too perfect. The room felt colder than it should have, even for October. I glanced at the mother, her gaze fixed on her son, unblinking. "Hold still," I said, though the boy hadn't moved an inch. The chemicals on the plate were sensitive, and any motion would ruin the image. I counted aloud, my voice echoing in the quiet studio. The boy's stillness unnerved me, but I pressed on. The exposure finished, and I exhaled, unaware I'd been holding my breath. I removed the plate, careful not to smudge the delicate emulsion. The mother watched me, her eyes hollow, as if she were seeing something beyond the room. I carried the plate to my darkroom, a cramped space lit by a single red lamp. The chemicals stung my nose as I developed the image, watching the boy's face emerge. His features were sharp, almost too perfect, like a painting. But his eyes, they were closed. Yet they seemed to stare directly at me. A chill ran down my spine, though I couldn't explain why. The image was flawless, but it felt alive in a way that photographs rarely did. I held it up to the light, studying the details. His lips were slightly parted, as if he were about to speak. I shook off the unease and returned to the studio. The mother was gone, the boy with her. My payment sat on the table, glinting in the dim light. I felt a strange relief, but it didn't last. That night, I couldn't sleep. The boy's face haunted me, his closed eyes burning in my mind. I lit a candle and studied the photograph again, now framed in my parlor. The longer I looked, the more I felt he was watching me. It was absurd. His eyes were shut, after all. But the sensation grew, like a weight pressing on my chest. I turned the frame face down, hoping to shake the feeling. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. I tried to focus on my work, preparing for the next day's clients. But my thoughts kept drifting back to the boy. Who was he? Why had his mother been so desperate? I remember her words, "Make him look alive." They echoed in my head, louder with each repetition. I poured a glass of whiskey, hoping to dull the unease. It didn't help. The photograph seemed to hum with a strange energy. The next morning, I asked around town about the woman and her son. No one knew them. Our town was small, and strangers stood out, yet no one recalled seeing them. I described the boy pale, dark-haired, eyes closed. Old Mrs. Carter, the town gossip, paused at my words. "Sounds like a memento mori," she said, her voice low. I frowned, unfamiliar with the term. She explained, "Photographs of the dead, taken to preserve their memory." My stomach churned. The boy couldn't have been dead. He'd stood upright, hadn't he? But the more I thought, the more I doubted. His stillness, his pallor, his closed eyes, it all fit. I rushed back to my studio, my heart pounding. The photograph was still face down, but I swore I heard a faint whisper. I didn't dare turn it over. Instead, I locked it in a drawer, vowing to forget. Days passed, but the boy's image lingered in my thoughts. I tried to focus on my work, photographing farmers and their families, but my hands shook. Clients noticed, whispering about my unsteady demeanor. At night, I dreamed of the boy, his eyes opening in the photograph, staring into my soul. I began to see him in shadows, in the corners of my vision. The studio felt different, heavier, as if someone were always watching. I stopped developing photographs, afraid of what I might see. The drawer where I kept the boy's image rattled sometimes, though I told myself it was the wind. I drank more, trying to drown the fear. But it grew, clawing at my mind. I started asking more questions, desperate for answers. A traveling merchant mentioned a woman matching the mother's description, passing through weeks ago. She'd been alone, he said. No boy. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I opened the drawer, my hands trembling as I lifted the photograph. The boy's face was the same, yet different. His eyes were still closed, but his expression seemed sharper, almost accusing. I studied the background, noticing details I'd missed. Behind him, faint but clear, was a shadow that didn't belong. It was shaped like a man, tall and thin, but no one else had been in the room. My heart raced as I realized the shadow's edges were too sharp, too deliberate. It wasn't a flaw in the plate, it was something else. I dropped the photograph, backing away. The air grew thick, oppressive, like a storm about to break. I heard a sound, like footsteps, but my studio was empty. I locked the photograph away again, my hands slick with sweat. I needed to know the truth, no matter the cost. I tracked down the merchant, pressing him for details. He remembered the woman's name, Clara, and said she'd come from a village 2 days' ride away. I closed my studio and set out, driven by a need I couldn't explain. The journey was cold, the roads muddy and treacherous. When I reached the village, I asked for Clara. The locals were wary, but an old man pointed me to a small house on the outskirts. I knocked, my heart pounding. Clara answered, her face gaunt, her eyes red from crying. She recognized me immediately, though we'd only met once. You saw him, she said, not a question. I nodded, unable to speak. She invited me in, her hands shaking as she poured tea. She told me her son, Elias, had died a month before our session. My blood ran cold. Clara's story unfolded in halting whispers. Elias had been sick for months, his body wasting away. She'd prayed for a miracle, but none came. After his death, she couldn't bear to let him go. A traveling photographer had told her about memento mori, a way to keep her son's face forever. She dressed Elias in his best clothes, propped him up, and brought him to me. I felt sick, picturing the boy's lifeless body in my studio. Clara said she'd felt him there, even after death, watching her. She'd hoped the photograph would give her peace, but it hadn't. She showed me a locket with his hair, her fingers tracing it lovingly. I wanted to tell her about the shadow in the photograph, but I couldn't. Instead, I left, promising to return the image. I never did. Back in my studio, I burned the photograph. The flames curled around the boy's face, his closed eyes vanishing in the fire. I thought it would end there, but it didn't. The dreams grew worse, more vivid. Elias stood in my studio, his eyes now open, staring through me. I stopped sleeping, afraid of what I'd see. My business faltered, clients sensing my fear. I moved to another town, hoping distance would help. It didn't. The boy followed me, not in photographs but in mirrors, in windows, in the spaces between light and shadow. I began to wonder if I captured more than an image that day. Had I trapped something else, something that lingered beyond death? I wrote down everything, hoping to make sense of it. This story is my confession, my warning. Some things should not be photographed. The new town offered no solace. My reputation as a photographer had followed me, but so had the boy's presence. I rented a small room above a tavern, the walls thin and creaking. At night, I heard whispers, soft and unintelligible, like a child's voice. I stopped looking in mirrors, afraid of what I might see. My camera gathered dust, untouched since that day. I tried to pray, but the words felt hollow, as if something blocked them. The townsfolk noticed my decline, whispering about the haunted photographer. I laughed it off, but their words stung. I began to research photography's history, desperate for answers. Some texts mentioned early experiments capturing more than just light. Spiritualists claimed cameras could see beyond the veil. I scoffed at first, but doubt crept in. Had I opened a door I couldn't close? One night, I found an old book in a dusty shop, its pages yellowed and brittle. It spoke of spirit photography, images that revealed the unseen. The author, a disgraced scientist, claimed cameras could capture souls if the conditions were right. I read by candlelight, my hands shaking. The book described cases like mine, subjects who appeared alive but weren't. The scientist warned of consequences, of energies trapped in silver plates. I thought of Elias, his closed eyes staring through me. The book offered no solutions, only warnings. I burned it too, but the word stayed with me. I began to see patterns in my life. Objects moved. Doors creaked open. Shadows lingered too long. I wondered if Elias was angry, or if something else had followed him. The thought kept me awake, my mind unraveling. I tried to return to photography, hoping normalcy would banish the haunting. My first client was a young girl, her smile bright and alive. But when I developed her photograph, I saw him, Elias, faint in the background, his eyes still closed. I destroyed the plate, refunded the family, and lied about a mistake. I couldn't risk another image like that. I began to avoid people, locking myself in my room. The whispers grew louder, now forming words I couldn't quite catch. I wrote letters to Clara, asking for forgiveness, but never sent them. I felt responsible, as if my camera had stolen something from her son. I considered destroying my equipment, but it was all I had left. Instead, I hid it, hoping to break the connection. It didn't work. Elias was everywhere. One night, I woke to a sound, a soft tap, like fingers on glass. My window was fogged, as if someone had breathed on it. I wiped it clean, my heart racing, but saw nothing outside. The tapping continued, now from inside the room. I searched, finding my camera uncovered, its lens glinting in the moonlight. I hadn't touched it in weeks. Trembling, I opened the back, expecting to find a plate. It was empty, yet the tapping grew louder. I smashed the camera, with splintering under my fists. The noise stopped, but the air grew heavy, oppressive. I felt eyes on me, though I was alone. I lit every candle in the room, chasing away the shadows. But they returned, darker, sharper. I knew then that Elias wasn't the only presence. Something else was with me. I fled the town, leaving everything behind. I wandered, taking odd jobs, avoiding cameras and mirrors. But the boy followed, his image burned into my mind. I saw him in crowds, in reflections, in dreams that felt too real. I began to question my sanity, wondering if I had invented him. But Claire's story, her grief, was real. I found a priest, hoping for exorcism or absolution. He listened, his face grim, and told me some souls cling to the living. He blessed me, but it changed nothing. The whispers returned, now clear. You saw me. I didn't know if it was Elias or something darker. I stopped running, too tired to fight. I settled in a remote cabin, far from anyone. But even there, the shadows moved, watching, waiting. I began to accept my fate. I started writing again, documenting every detail. It was my only way to stay sane, to make sense of the impossible. I described Elias, Clara, the photograph, the shadow. I wrote about the whispers, the tapping, the eyes I felt but couldn't see. The act of writing grounded me, though it didn't stop the haunting. I began to wonder if Elias wanted something from me. Forgiveness? Release? I had no answers. I tried to remember the photograph's details, but they blurred in my memory. Only his eyes, closed, yet seeing, remained clear. I sketched his face, hoping to exorcise him through art. The drawings came out wrong, his features twisted, the shadow behind him growing larger. I burned them, too, but the act felt futile. The cabin felt smaller each day, the walls closing in. One night, a storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the cabin. I saw him then, standing in the corner, his eyes still closed. He was clearer than ever, not a dream or a shadow but real. I froze, unable to speak. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his presence filled the room. The air crackled, like the moment before a photograph's exposure. I whispered his name, Elias, and the room went dark. When the lightning flashed again, he was gone. I searched the cabin, finding nothing but my own fear. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I began to wonder if I was dead, trapped in some limbo with him. The thought was madness, but it felt true. I stopped eating, my body weakening. The whispers grew constant, a chorus of voices now. I was losing myself. I decided to face him. I found an old mirror, dusty and cracked, and set it before me. I stared into it, waiting. Hours passed, my reflection blurring in the dim light. Then I saw him, behind me, his eyes closed but his face alive with intent. I spoke to him, begging him to leave. The mirror shook, the glass rattling in its frame. I asked what he wanted, my voice breaking. The whispers answered, a single word, see. I didn't understand, but I kept talking, pleading. The mirror stilled, and he vanished. I felt a shift, like a weight lifting, but not entirely. I smashed the mirror, shards scattering across the floor. The cabin felt lighter, but I knew he wasn't gone. I wrote this down, my hand shaking. I needed to warn others, to stop this from happening again. I returned to photography, but not as before. I took no portraits, only landscapes, empty fields, barren trees. They were safe, free of eyes or shadows. But sometimes, in the developed plates, I saw hints of him, a blur in the distance, a shape in the clouds. I destroyed those images, but they kept appearing. I realized I couldn't escape him, not fully. I began to study the science of photography again, searching for an explanation. Some said early cameras used mercury, a poison that could affect the mind. I wondered if I'd been exposed, if this was all delusion. But Claire's story, the shadow, the whispers, they were too real. I wrote to scientists, spiritualists, anyone who might know. Most dismissed me, but one replied, suggesting I captured a residue of Elias's soul. The idea terrified me. I burned my last camera, vowing never to touch one again. The act felt final, but it didn't stop the haunting. Elias was part of me now, woven into my thoughts, my dreams. I moved again, to a city where no one knew me. I worked as a clerk, blending into the crowd. But I saw him still in reflections, in the faces of strangers. I stopped writing for a while, afraid of what my words might summon. But silence made it worse. I returned to this story, needing to finish it. I don't know if Elias is a ghost, a memory, or something else. I don't know if the shadow was in Sistine Chapel, or something darker. I only know that I carry him with me. This is my truth, my burden. I write to warn you, to beg you. Be careful what you capture. Some things cannot be undone. Years have passed since that day in 1858, but the weight remains. I'm an old man now, my hands too unsteady for cameras. I live alone, my life a quiet penance. The whispers have faded, but they never truly leave. I see Elias less often, but he's there, in the corners of my vision. I've learned to live with him, like a scar that aches in the cold. I've read more about photography, about light and chemistry, hoping for answers. Science offers none, only theories of optics and illusion. But I know what I saw, what I felt. The shadow in that photograph was no accident. I've stopped sharing this story with others. They call it madness. Perhaps it is. But I write it for you, to carry forward. The past is never truly gone. It lingers, watching, waiting. I pray you heed my warning. I keep no photographs in my home, no mirrors. They feel like windows to a place I dare not look. I've learned to avoid reflections, to live in soft light. But sometimes, in the quiet, I hear him. See, he says, and I wonder what I missed. I've studied my notes, my sketches, searching for clues. The shadow in the photograph is my obsession, its shape burned into my mind. I've drawn it 100 times, each version darker, sharper. I've read of demons, of spirits, of things that cling to the living. I don't know what followed Elias, but it saw me. I was its witness, its captor. I live carefully now, avoiding anything that might call it back. My life is small, but it's mine. I write to keep it that way. I visited Claire's village once more, years later. Her house was empty, the windows boarded. The locals said she died not long after I met her. They spoke of her grief, her endless mourning. No one mentioned a boy, but I didn't ask. I stood at her door, feeling Elias's presence. I left flowers, a small gesture of guilt. I never told her about the shadow, the whispers. I wish I had. Perhaps she knew. Perhaps it haunted her too. I returned to my city, my heart heavy. I stopped writing for a time, but the story demanded to be told. I sit now, pen in hand, the candle flickering. The air is still, but I feel him. He's waiting, always waiting. I write to keep him at bay. Photography has changed since 1858. Faster, sharper, safer. But I wonder if it's truly safe. The books don't speak of souls, but I know better. Every click of a shutter is a gamble, a moment stolen from time. I've seen what it can take. Elias taught me that. His eyes, closed forever, saw more than I ever will. I've burned every trace of him, yet he remains. I've learned to live with it, to carry the weight. But I fear for others, for those who point and shoot without thought. What do they capture unknowingly? What follows them home? I write this in the dark, my candle low. The shadows move, but I don't look. I can't. This is my truth, my warning. I've tried to find peace, to make amends. I've prayed, though I don't know to whom. The church offers comfort, but no answers. The spiritualists speak of veils and spirits, but they don't understand. I've read their books, their theories, their rituals. None mention the shadow, the thing that wasn't Elias. I've drawn it so many times. Its form clearer, with each attempt. It's tall, thin, faceless, yet it sees. I feel it even now, in the quiet of my room. I've stopped running, stopped hiding. I face it through these words, my last defense. I don't know if Elias is at peace, or if he's trapped with me. I only know he's here. I write for him, for Clara, for myself. The world moves on, but I'm stuck in 1858. That moment, that photograph, defined me. I was young, ambitious, blind to the consequences. Now I'm old, broken, wise in ways I wish I weren't. I see cameras everywhere, in every hand. They're toys now, not tools of magic. But I know their power, their danger. I've lived it. Elias was my lesson, my curse. His eyes, closed in death, opened something in me. I don't know if it's fear or truth. I only know it's real. I write this in the dark, my hand steady now. The whispers are soft, but they're there. I don't look at the shadows. I can't. This is my story, my warning. I've thought of destroying this manuscript, but I can't. It's all that's left of me, of Elias. I write to keep him alive, in a way. To keep the shadow at bay. I don't know if it works, but I try. I've lived a life of caution, of fear. I don't want that for you. Be careful what you capture, what you keep. The past is not a memory, it's a presence. I feel it every day, in every shadow. I've tried to make peace with Elias, with Clara, with myself. I don't know if I've succeeded. I only know I must tell this story. The candle is almost gone, the room cold. I hear him, faint but clear. See, he says. I don't know what it means. I'm nearing the end, my strength fading. This story is my legacy, my confession. I don't expect forgiveness, only understanding. Elias was a boy, like any other, until he wasn't. I made him eternal, and I paid the price. The shadow is my burden, my punishment. I've written every detail, every moment, hoping it's enough. I don't know if Elias is at rest, or if he's still here. I feel him, though, in the quiet, in the dark. I've lived my life in his shadow, and in the shadow of something else. I warn you now, as I wish I'd been warned. Photography is not a game. It's a door, and some doors should stay closed. I write this for you, for him, for me. The candle is out. I don't know if you'll believe me, but I hope you'll listen. The world is full of wonders, but not all are kind. I learned that in 1858, in a moment of light and silver. Elias was my teacher, his closed eyes my lesson. The shadow was my judge, and I'm still on trial. I've lived a life of fear, but also of truth. I've seen what lies beyond the lens, and it sees me. I write to warn you, to save you. Don't let your curiosity blind you. Don't let your camera steal what isn't yours. I feel him now, as I always do. His voice is soft, but it's there. See, he says, and I try. I try to see, to understand, to be free. This is my story, my truth. This is my final entry, my last words. I'm tired, but I'm not done. Elias is with me, always, his eyes closed but seeing. The shadow is here too, watching, waiting. I've written everything, every detail, every fear. I don't know if it's enough, but it's all I have. I've lived a life haunted by a moment, by a boy, by a shadow. I don't regret it, but I wish I'd known. I wish I'd been careful. I write this for you, so you'll know. Be wary of what you capture, what you keep. The past is alive, and it sees you. I hear him now, his whisper clear. See, he says, and I do. I see. This is my warning, my legacy. Heed it. If this story chilled you, subscribe to our channel for more tales that unravel the mysteries of history. Don't miss out. Join us now.